Welcome. We're so glad you're joining us today. My name is Jennie Sanders. I'm the Director of Faculty Experience at Western Governors University, and I'm joined by my two colleagues, Kate Porter. She's a Senior Manager of Faculty Experience, also at WGU, and Bill Dyer. He is our Business Transformation Project Manager at WGU. And we are excited to share with you our experience using change management strategies to support a successful large-scale change implementation at WGU. So in this video, we'll talk about four things. The first will be why change management, why a deliberate change management approach is important to project success. And then we'll describe what changes we were making. We'll share some specific strategies that we used during our implementation and summarize our learnings from that experience. In our change implementation, we used the ProSci ADKAR change management model, but our suggestions and discussions in this session are not specific to this ProSci approach. Our goal is to share what we learned about using a structured change management approach to support large-scale changes at our university. And your institution may use a different change management model, but we expect that many of the approaches and the lessons that we have learned will apply equally well for other change management models. Through this video, we want to be able to foster an interactive experience as best we can. So throughout, we will provide some thought or discussion questions that you can use to frame your thinking about change at your own institution. And we encourage you to pause the video as needed to record your thoughts on these questions before continuing with the video. So before we share the details of our change, let's take a few minutes to discuss the general benefits of a structured approach to managing change. And we'll start with a question. What is your mental model of change implementation? What are the components of a successful change? What steps do you think about following when implementing a change? Feel free to pause the video and record your thoughts before continuing. A common model for institutional changes involves three main components: identifying the change to be made, whether that change is to technology, process, or something else, then training employees on that change, and then considering the change to be successfully complete. Does this model seem familiar to you? This is certainly the model of change that we have used in the past at WGU. It makes sense. Clearly, training is a key component of supporting change, and it's important to incorporate training. However, this model doesn't account for all of the factors that contribute to the successful implementation of a change. So what's missing? In most cases, when we're making a change, we're not just changing a system or a process in a vacuum. We also need people, our employees, our students, our clients, to change something about their processes or habits. The people side of change is a critical component of successful implementation. And training alone does not adequately address the people side of change. And so a structured change management approach addresses this people side of the change. It provides context and frameworks for helping your employees implement the change effectively. Even without a structured change management approach, most changes do get implemented eventually, but well-managed change helps make that transition more efficient and cost-effective. The graphs on this slide show the results of change management research that demonstrate that projects with good or excellent change management are more likely to come in at or under budget and were more likely to meet or exceed their objectives than the projects that had poor or fair change management. We chose to use a formal change management approach for the launch of our learner-centered faculty model to maximize our chances for successful on-time launch. It was especially important to us to use effective change management for our learner-centered faculty initiative because this was a large, significant change affecting more than 2,500 faculty and their leaders. Learner-centered faculty was an initiative in which we designed our faculty support around the student journey. We focused on identifying key touch points along a student's path to their degree where faculty support was most critical. When do our students need us? And what are they likely to need? We identified key faculty practices and behaviors that were important for student success at each of these touch points. And then we revised and refined our faculty expectations, policies, processes, etc., to align with those needs. The changes included implementing for the first time service level agreements for our faculty, as well as the introduction of some standard processes that not all of our faculty were currently using. We introduced several new technology tools to support these new processes and expectations. We also made some changes to the student experience that necessitated support and messaging from our faculty to students to help them navigate the changes. And so as we prepared to implement these changes, we anticipated a number of challenges and concerns that were likely to arise. The updated tools addressed some long-standing faculty needs, and we therefore expected that many faculty and managers would welcome these changes. However, they also represented a significant shift in process, routine, and mindset for many of them, especially for faculty who had worked at WGU for a significant period of time. We anticipated these changes could be disruptive and potentially uncomfortable for some of our faculty. We also knew that changes to the student experience would require some additional support from our faculty to their students to ensure that they were navigating those changes effectively. Finally, we considered these changes in the context and history of WGU as an institution, thinking about the experiences that our faculty and students have had with change in the past. We knew some of those changes were not managed as well as they could have been, likely leading to a bit of skepticism, maybe even resistance, especially from faculty or managers with longer histories at WGU. Consider what we've shared about these changes that we've tried to implement. If your institution were facing a similar change, what approaches might you take? What challenges would you likely face? Consider different facets of the change. Not just what your employees or students will immediately need to change, but also what has their history with change been at your institution, your institutional culture and tenets and so on. Feel free to pause the video for a few minutes and write down or discuss your thoughts.
Next, we will share some of the guiding principles and approaches we took to implementing this change. As mentioned, our goal here is not to provide step-by-step instructions or promote a specific universal approach, but instead to share how and why we chose the strategies we used. We centered our change management approach around the 7 best practices for successful change management. We knew that one critical best practice is just to have a structured change management approach that all parties work from. As mentioned, we use the ProSci-ADKAR change model, but research indicates that the specific model selected is less important than having a consistent and structured approach to managing change. Our structured change management approach provided context and framing as we applied the other 6 key best practices for change management. We also incorporated into our change process our knowledge of some of the frustrations our faculty have experienced with change at WGU in the past. And because we recognized this larger institutional context, we knew that we would have to be especially intentional about the sponsorship, communication, and faculty engagement aspects of the change. Take a few minutes to think about your institution. How would you apply the change management best practices? Consider the history of change management at your institution. What has gone well in the past? What have you struggled with? Also, think about your institutional culture. What aspects of your culture are supportive of change? What aspects might resist change? How can you account for that in your change management plan? Finally, consider the nature of the changes. What will your employees or students need to do differently? How disruptive are the changes likely to be for their daily practices and routines? Will these changes affect their relationships with others at the institution? These are all factors which will influence how you apply the different practices and where you place the most emphasis or focus. To help you visualize how we put these guiding principles into practice, we'll provide some specific examples of how our implementation reflected each principle. We knew from both research and our experience with change at WGU that a visible, high-level commitment to the changes would be important in fostering trust and willingness to change among our faculty. And so we were intentional about seeking out and communicating support and sponsorship of the change from executive leaders, from our university president and provost to our college vice presidents and directors. We worked closely with these leaders to ensure their commitment to the changes, and we made sure that they were visible and explicitly supportive of the changes throughout the process. We used a variety of communication channels, including live broadcasts, recorded videos, and email to propagate information about these changes. As part of our design and launch process, we created a centralized SharePoint site that provides a single location for our faculty to self-serve resources as needed, while also serving as a repository and record of communications and future changes. We focused heavily on providing transparency and clarity for all decisions. We emphasized the factors considered when making various decisions and clearly explained the reasons for any changes or adjustments to the plan. When something didn't go as planned or when we had a miss, we were transparent about that too, including explaining how we were proceeding and what we were doing to prevent similar issues from recurring. We also recognize that a key aspect of communication is ensuring that all stakeholders feel heard and included in the decision making. And so we were explicit and intentional in providing opportunities for faculty to share their feedback, both live and asynchronously throughout the process. Change management research demonstrates the importance of employee engagement in change implementation, and adult learning theory also demonstrates that adults are most likely to commit to and internalize new processes and information when they understand the value of those changes to their specific needs. This research and our own experience reinforced for us that helping faculty understand why this change is occurring would improve buy-in and adoption. So we've been very focused throughout these changes on helping faculty understand the why of the change. This focus on rationale included tying the changes we were making to ultimate student outcomes, such as on-time progress and graduation, which motivate our faculty. We also were very careful to clearly call out the risks of remaining in our current state. We anticipated that many faculty would ask, "My current processes work well, so why do I need to change?" And so we were also intentional about explaining why current state processes will not be sufficient to get us where we need to go in the future. As we thought about our historical institutional culture, we recognized that innovation and independence were important values for many of our faculty. Therefore, we needed to help them balance providing a consistent experience and level of support for students with appropriate levels of innovation around standard tools and processes. With such a large faculty body, we knew that relying on a single training team for all faculty training and support would just not be feasible. We also knew that change management research indicates the importance of the preferred sender for various messages. For example, messaging about the long-term vision and importance of change is typically most well received if it comes from an executive level sponsor or senior leader, whereas discussions about day-to-day, what's in it for me implications of the change are most effective when they are facilitated by an immediate manager or supervisor. So we made deliberate use of both frontline managers and faculty champions to help faculty internalize and apply the changes. We provided frontline managers with change management training, including practice and discussion, focused on improving buy-in and managing resistance. This training emphasized helping managers support not just faculty understanding of new tools and processes, but also the psychological and emotional aspects of the change. So we provided opportunities for managers to practice challenging conversations with faculty, and we provided references and manager guides throughout the training and implementation. Our commitment to following a structured change management plan extended to our project planning and management. We were able to explicitly incorporate change management steps into each phase of the project. Because our project managers were knowledgeable about change management, they were also able to call out opportunities for supporting the change throughout the project. Finally, we recognize the critical importance of dedicating resources explicitly to change management. As an institution, WGU made a commitment to organize change management, and this included substantial investment in formal change management training for employees. At last count, there are nearly 200 certified change managers at our university, and nearly all of our faculty managers have had formal training on the role of managers in supporting change. As we'll share next, these strategies have helped us see significant success and identify key learnings from this process.
The implementation of the learner-centered faculty model was the first time we applied a structured formal change management framework to a major change at WGU, and our results have been promising so far. We've received feedback from faculty, managers, and college leaders in a variety of formats that this change has been the best managed and most comfortable they've experienced at WGU. Faculty who've worked at WGU for a long time have shared that they feel more confident in the sticking power of this change than in other previous large changes. And managers have shared that they feel well supported and prepared to help their teams manage the change. We've also consistently heard that faculty understand why we're making the changes and how they'll benefit students. The positive results we've seen and the benefits of an organized approach to change management have also increased interest among our college leaders in having a greater involvement in change management. They supported and have been active participants in a change management coalition that we created, which includes representatives from all of our colleges. We collaborate regularly with this coalition to plan upcoming change messaging and support, ensuring college input and representation. This type of coalition would not have been feasible without the successful change management we demonstrated. And these qualitative observations are borne out by quantitative results as well. Some of the quantitative data we've been examining include faculty survey responses and actual utilization of the new technology tools. Within 8 months of beginning our change process, 90% of our faculty reported feeling confident in their ability to apply the new processes and approaches with their students. 95% were consistently using the new technology, even though the older tools were still available. And 3/4 of our faculty reported that they found the resources and supports we offered helpful to their daily work. Another success metric we've considered for the change implementation as a whole was changes to student outcomes. Although our data analysis is still ongoing, we are seeing significant initial improvements in student outcomes, especially among our first-term students. These are students who started at WGU after the implementation of the learner-centered faculty design. In other words, students who have experienced only the new faculty support model. Comparing our students who ended their first term in January or February of 2020 to first-term students who ended their term in January or February 2019, before the changes were implemented, we've seen significant improvements in student outcomes. Year over year, the on-time progress rate for our first-term students has increased by about 4%. On-time progress is defined as completing all of the expected courses in a given term. Our first-term students have also shown increases in completion rates in our general education courses and overall on-time course completion rates. Taken together, the qualitative and quantitative results give us confidence that the structured change management approach, emphasizing transparency, communication, and support, was a critical factor in the successful implementation of our learner-centered faculty model. Outside of the immediate impacts on this specific change, we're also seeing larger scale benefits to our structured approach to change management. Since our change management informed implementation of learner-centered faculty design, we've begun to see cultural shifts within our colleges and practices. We're hearing more messaging and framing emphasizing learning, iteration, and continuous quality improvement. We're also noticing more faculty moving toward collaboration and recognition of how their actions affect others in the student's community of care. Our commitment to transparency and communication has also helped us build significant trust with our faculty. They continue to share suggestions, feedback, and concerns with us, knowing that we'll listen with an open mind and respond honestly, even if we aren't able to give them the answer they're hoping for. We're also seeing more and more projects at WGU use a structured change management approach as part of their implementation. Our team is often consulted when other teams are preparing large-scale changes. They ask us for our insights and suggestions based on our experiences. As an institution, WGU made the commitment to invest in a change management program several years ago, and learner-centered faculty design was the first significant project to which it was applied. Since our implementation, we've seen many other changes using this type of approach, and each has built on the successes and learnings from previous implementations. Speaking of learning, as with any new process or approach, we didn't have unqualified success, of course. Consistent with our intentional focus on growth and learning, we've been continually analyzing and adjusting our approach as we move out of the initial implementation phase and into the maintenance and reinforcement phases. We've learned several key lessons that we continue to apply to new changes. First, our experiences have reinforced that preparing for and launching a change is a different process than sustaining that change over the long term. The strategies we used to manage change and resistance early on became less effective or relevant as the change became less new, and we've had to identify new strategies to support our faculty's evolving needs. On a related note, we've also learned that the management and implementation of this change has taken significantly longer and required more resources than we originally anticipated. Although our expectations for the initial phases of the change were pretty accurate, and most faculty adopted the new processes and tools along the timeline we anticipated, the long tail has been longer than we thought it would be. We continue to receive requests for clarification, support, and reinforcement from faculty and managers, even though it's been more than 18 months since we initially started the change process. We've learned that when implementing this type of large-scale change, we need to continue to dedicate resources to fundamental training and support for a significant period after the initial rollout. Finally, during the first few months after we released the majority of these changes, we recognized an oversight in our initial plan. Although we'd been very intentional about communicating the changes to our faculty teams and offered a feedback option in the form of a survey, we'd neglected to include opportunities for faculty to discuss their needs and concerns with each other and with us in a live format. When we implemented listening rooms in which individual faculty and managers could share their observations and suggestions, we noted that perceptions of the change became more positive and that they were more willing to advocate for the changes to their peers, even if we were unable to implement specific suggestions or requests they had shared. Our outcomes so far and our experiences with this process overall have reinforced for us the value of a structured approach to managing change at our institution. We found that the benefits of this approach are wide-ranging, and we continue to refine and improve our strategies as we move toward further innovations to fulfill our mission of improving the lives of our students and their families. As you reflect on the strategies we shared and your own institutional context, think about what your next steps might be. What approaches will you try in your next change implementation? Thank you for your time and attention today. We welcome questions and discussion and hope you'll contact us with any thoughts you'd like to share.